All right, this year's dunk contest was a massive success for the NBA. Going into it, as always, I was extremely skeptical. We know about the history of the dunk contest pretty much over like the last decade. There have been some years where it has been amazing. Thinking about the years where Zach LaVine was winning it, there was an amazing dunk off between him and Aaron Gordon that we saw. And there have obviously been some years where it has been flat out horrible. I feel like right now we're getting to a point where the dunk contest has been decent enough for us to be pretty confident going into it. Like with McClung's name being attached to it, now the dunk contest feels like it's something to be excited to see instead of something that we're anticipating is going to be bad. That's how good McClung has been over like the last few years with this competition. I will say, as far as like the other guys that were participating in the contest, there's Buzelis from the Chicago Bulls, the rookie. There was Andre Jackson from the Bucks, who's in his second season, and yet another rookie in Stephon Castle. As far as like the field, I wasn't really impressed coming in. And that was kind of shown off through the rough performance for both Jackson and Buzelis. But Stephon Castle was pretty decent in this thing as well. And I'm not going to say decent, actually. He was pretty impressive. He had some amazing dunks in this one. My favorite was like that windmill 360 with his left hand, whatever you want to call it. I thought that was pretty neat just because of the degree of difficulty, the fact that he did it with his left hand and he was losing control of the ball at the same time. But yeah, I was skeptical about how the field was going to perform coming into this one. I think the dunk contest is great when everybody is performing at a high level, and that's with anything in the sport of basketball. But we didn't get amazing stuff from the other two dunkers, but like that late final matchup between McClung and Stephon Castle, to me, was worth the price of admission. And back over to McClung, the things he was doing today were absolutely unreal. There were some dunks that he had that looked a little reminiscent of what we saw over the previous years, but there are also some dunks that we just haven't seen. Like that Kia dunk was off the chain. He was coming from a completely different angle than what we saw Blake Griffin do back in 2011. It was a tougher one because it was a reverse. He wasn't even looking at the rim. And also like that two ball dunk thing that he did where he grabbed it from the guy who was on the hoverboard, then the guy who's on that ladder. That was absolutely off the chain. I don't really think people realize how difficult some of these dunks are. Like when you take into account the degree of difficulty, the level of focus, and also the stakes, it makes all of these things impressive. When I'm watching him dunk over Evan Mobley, right? Or last year dunk over Shaq, or this year dunking over that Kia, the first thing that comes to my mind is, what happens if he doesn't make this dunk and maybe gets hurt? Like that's something that a lot of us don't really include in the dunk contest conversations, right? We're so stuck on the aesthetics of it all and if these guys get it on the first or second attempt. And I understand that that's massive when it comes to grading the dunks and coming up with an actual score. But like when you think about the degree of difficulty and what's at stake, if the dunk goes wrong, it makes you appreciate it that much more. Like McClung is doing some daredevil type stuff when he's pulling these dunks off. It's really ridiculous to see. And it's also the fact that he's doing it on limited attempts. I can't name a time where McClung is taking a ton of attempts to get to his dunk, right? Like most of the time, and you guys can let me know if I'm wrong, McClung's either getting it on that first attempt, which he has largely done throughout the course of his dunk contest career, or at worst, that second attempt. I don't remember a third attempt dunk from McClung so far in this contest. You guys can let me know if I'm wrong, but the fact that he's getting these things done early on, through the rounds, and he's not taking a ton of time to get his dunks off, it's really insane. And it's the reason why he's getting those 50s on a consistent basis, is because when you're completing the dunks earlier, there is that element of surprise, right? Versus you taking like 3 or 4 attempts. We already know what your idea is. It gets watered down by the time you complete it. We kind of watch you practice a few times if it's taking you like 3 to 4 attempts, and it just doesn't make it as impressive and doesn't give that feeling and that shock value. So great stuff from McClung. I think the dynamic with him being like a 3-time dunk contest champion and not being in the NBA is still pretty wild. That's like another conversation for another day. But the fact that he has been the face of like the premier event or one of the premier events of All-Star Weekend, which is one of the massive sporting events of the year. The fact that he's like the face of the dunk contest and isn't in the NBA or isn't on an actual NBA roster. He's on a G League roster and he is playing well, but the fact that he's not on the NBA roster, yet he's pretty much carried the dunk contest and it's evident through his 3 consecutive victories. That is pretty interesting to me, but either way, impressive stuff here. It takes a lot of athleticism and skill and concentration and focus to be able to do and pull off the things that he's been pulling off in this contest. So the Rising Stars Challenge was great and the dunk contest was great as well. 3-point contest wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. Also, the skills challenge to me is just something that I'm never going to be really interested in watching in the first place. But we all know why we're tuning in on All-Star Saturday night. It is for the dunk contest. And I thought based off of what we got, I was extremely impressive. I think it's going to be something that fans are going to be excited to see as time moves on. I was a fan of the format and the rules. I didn't feel underwhelmed by the amount of dunk attempts that guys were getting. These guys were getting a ton of opportunities to entertain the fans. So I thought it was great. Great All-Star weekend so far. Great dunk contest. And again, shout out to McClung for having yet another amazing performance on this massive stage when his number was called.